you're watching Gears, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
If you're into cars and trucks, you've probably seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari. And it's a great movie because it introduces you to legendary racers like Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles, and it shows you how Ken Miles got robbed of sure victory at Le Mans in 1966 driving the GT40. But what the movie doesn't really talk about is who the other drivers were that were in the GT40 that actually won Le Mans in 1966. One of them went on to become one of the most dominant names in motorsports. His name was Bruce McLaren. Take a look. Success started early for Bruce McLaren when he sprang to prominence in 1959 by winning the United States Grand Prix at age 22. Now, this made him the youngest person to win a Grand Prix for 40 years until Fernando Alonso won in 2003. But Bruce's victories didn't stop in 1959. No, over the next few years, he continued to rack up victory after victory in both Grand Prix and Formula One racing, and people began to realize that the young driver from New Zealand wasn't just a great driver, but a great engineer as well. So in 1963, Bruce decided to branch out and start building his own cars under the McLaren name. And whether they had Bruce behind the wheel or someone else, the McLaren cars immediately became a force to be reckoned with in Grand Prix and Formula One racing. But it was the Can-Am series that McLaren and his cars really dominated. Wider and more traditional than the single-seat open-wheel style cars, the Can-Am series was perfect for a serious designer and engineer like Bruce that had a firm grasp on the mechanical aspect of racing, but also on the aerodynamics and downforce part as well. So, when the wedge-shaped McLaren M6A hit the track, with its long nose and raised tail and papaya orange paint, there was nothing else like it, and it won a lot. For the 1969 season, McLaren came out with the M7C, which was powered by the Ford Cosworth engine. And it was so fast and so dominant that it won all 11 races that year. And suddenly, McLaren was the car everyone was talking about. But Bruce had a secret. He didn't want to just build race cars. He also wanted to build street cars like Ferrari and Carroll Shelby and Porsche and those sort of guys. So, in typical McLaren fashion, he took the chassis of an M6 race car and put a closed coupe body over it and called it the M6GT. The result was not only McLaren's first road car, but it also became Bruce's personal daily driver, for testing purposes, of course. Weighing in at around 1,800 pounds with a 400 horsepower V8, the M6GT had 180 mile-an-hour top speed. It could go from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds and go from 0 to 100 in 8 seconds. This kind of performance earned it the honor of being called the fastest production street car in 1969. So, where are all those cars? Why don't you ever see them at auctions or at shows? Well, unfortunately, this is where the story takes a little bit of a hard turn, because Bruce McLaren was killed in 1970 at age 32 while testing a new race car. And his vision to build 250 production M6 GTs died with him. So only 4 of those boys were ever built. Fortunately for us, that's not the end of the story. The M6 GT was such a cool car, it had already caught the imagination of everyone who had seen it, and its performance made it legendary. So when the 70s kit car boom hit, several companies produced kits that would give you the look of the McLaren. But without the aftermarket that we have today, most were hacked up pretty bad or bolted down onto a Volkswagen chassis. However, they weren't all bad. One of those cars made its way onto a TV show called Hardcastle and McCormick, and even though it was called the Coyote and lacked the thunder of a V8 engine, it was still cool. And millions of young car nuts dreamed of owning a car like that one day. But that was a long time ago, and owning an M6 GT was probably just a crazy dream anyway, right? I mean, the originals are worth millions, nobody makes a good replica, so what are you gonna do? Well, what I have here is a new car that's coming out from a place called Retroformance, and it's not only based on the McLaren M6GT, but it's built to today's standards using today's performance parts. You got to check this out.
So one thing I noticed working on these high-end race cars and high-end rare cars is that they're very expensive. They take a team of people to do the maintenance on them if you ever want to drive them. And for guys like me, my age, coming into the car world, they're again, unobtainium. I've always wanted to take something that, you know, was unobtainable for people and do whatever I can do to get it so that they can enjoy it too.
Metal. It's one of the key components of what we build and fabricate with. But if you can't shape it and cut it, you can't build with it. For over 50 years, Woodward Fab has been supplying the tools and technical advice to get the job done right. Bead rollers, brakes, shears, tubing benders. You'll find what you need whether you're a professional metal worker or just starting out. Woodward Fab, shaping metal since 1966.
Hey, welcome back to Gears. If you're just getting here, you're probably looking at this going, man, what is this wild go-kart looking thing that you got here? Well, it's not a go-kart, but it's pretty close. This is the chassis of a new replica that's coming out of the iconic McLaren M6GT. And the company that's making this is called Retroformance. Now, the reason this is such a big deal is that pulling off a true mid-engine car is not easy. That's why very few companies offer them. The good news is, Retroformance might be new to the mid-engine game, but they've been building cool cars and trucks for a long time. Take a look.
When we started getting into cars, we did a lot of light resto mod stuff, so upgrading electronics, servicing classic cars, and so we just knew that there was kind of a need for people with specialty skills, and there's a need to upgrade this stuff to more modern technology.
Even though Ben grew up in a shop and knew he wanted to build cars for a living, he also knew that having a degree in engineering would be a good thing to add to his hands-on experience.
Always wanted to be an engineer because I figured car designing is a hard game to get into. So, you know, went to school for engineering, worked a little bit in aerospace, was a systems engineer, you know, developing systems. You know, when my grandfather passed away, we kind of rebranded my family's machine shop that we were always screwing around in, and we said, you know what, let's do some car stuff. So that's just kind of how it came to be.
So, with a good understanding of modern tools and equipment and a strong work ethic, Retroformance was born in Lebanon, Connecticut, with the goal of making a supercar possible to the average guy.
Our target goal is right around the $30,000 mark for a fairly complete roller. So that'll get you the tub, that'll get you the A-arms, that'll give you the spindles, the hubs, you can bolt wheels on it, it'll have shocks, brakes, and a nice body mounted to it, and then you kind of go from there.
But cost is one thing. Building a mid-engine car, that's a whole different deal, because the chassis is the key to this sort of car. And that's where Charlie Strickland from Strickland Racing came in.
I have made 53 NASCAR starts, not as a driver, but as a team owner in some of them, and a team, I don't know what the definition of this is, a team leaseor. I have leased cars from other teams to enter races. So I started looking around for life after NASCAR. I discovered the kit car deal. I discovered what a joke the Lambo on a Fiero deal was. Said, here's where my expertise may be able to find a niche market, and I started to pursue that.
Charlie brought to the table not only years of experience building race car chassis, but also frames and chassis for hot rods and high-end supercar replicas. So the Strickland Racing chassis system was the perfect choice to fit under an M6GT replica.
The M6GT chassis draws a lot from my previous Lambo chassis. The suspension geometry is much the same. The design technique, the origami, the dog bones, the bulkheads.
But there is a lot that goes into building a mid-engine chassis like this that, number one, is worthy of the M6GT name, and number two, would be something you can afford to buy. So what we have here is the first chassis. It's in the final prototype stage. So we're going to blow this thing apart and show you what it takes to develop a car like this and get it to market. The foundation of any mid-engine car is the frame and chassis. And unlike the old 70s kit cars that were just a body bolted onto a frame, the M6GT utilizes a monocoque design like the original cars. If you're not familiar with the term monocoque, it's basically a fancy term for unibody, and here's how it works. Aluminum square tubing is used to create upper and lower rails, and aluminum panels are then used to add more rigidity and create a tub structure. This tub supports all aspects of the car, from suspension to drivetrain to body panels. So there's a lot of math and geometry needed to get it right. Through the use of triangulation and proper bracing, all of these aluminum pieces work together to form an incredibly strong, rigid structure that is also very light.
The current generation is looking around for something to build, and they're not looking for a T-Bucket Roadster. This is kind of the next generation kit car.
If you like cars, if you like coffee, you're gonna love GEARZ coffee cars. Because in each pack, you'll find a special blend of rich, robust coffee to get your blood pumping, as well as a collectible cartoon sticker and matching photo card of some of the wildest vehicles Stacey has built or featured over the years. Collect the whole series and be sure to keep an eye out for the ultra-rare Strange Brew card that are added to random packages to keep things interesting. It's GEARZ coffee cars, the best bean on the car scene.
Hey, welcome back to GEARZ, where we have gotten our hands on the very first prototype of this new McLaren M6GT replica that Retroformance is putting out so you can have one in your garage. Now, as you can see, we have this thing totally blown apart so you can see how it's designed, how it's developed, how it goes together, and how serviceable it is. These are all important things to know if you're thinking about investing in a component car like this. Now, obviously, the foundation of this car is this all-aluminum monocoque tub from Strickland Racing. Now, the reason we're using a monocoque on this is because of the way it's designed and triangulated. It's extremely strong. It's also extremely rigid, so it's not going to bend and twist under hard use. And at the same time, it's very light. How light is it? I'd say it's pretty light. All right, now we're going to start putting it back together. Put it on the suspension so you can see how this whole thing is assembled. The first to go on are the custom-made upper and lower control arms that bolt to the tub. These are supported with dual Viking adjustable coilover shocks in the rear to support the weight of the drivetrain, and single shocks up front. These will allow you to quickly fine-tune the suspension for how you want to drive the car. The control arms bolt to custom spindles, and for brakes, we've got big 13-inch drilled and slotted wheelwood rotors and 6 piston calipers at all 4 corners to slow this thing down in a hurry. The rears also have additional parking brakes for safety. Now for pedals, we're also using a wheelwood pedal assembly to give us infinite adjustment and complete control over the throttle, the brakes, and the clutch. Now, in front of the tub is not only where the master cylinders are going to mount, but also the old air heat and air unit, the wiring harness, the ECM, the radiators, the cooling fans, the condenser. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes out the front of a mid-engine car. Now, there's going to be an aluminum pan that's going to go under here and support all that, and all this will be covered under that long nose. Remember, the windshield starts about here, so there's a lot of nose that's going to go out this way. Now, the same idea of using every bit of available space continues down the side of the car, because with a 95-inch wheelbase, there's not a lot of room here. So you might be wondering, okay, where does the fuel tank go? Well, there's actually 2 of them, just like the original M6GT, and they mount on either side of the cockpit, which means you have to step over the fuel tanks and kind of fall into the car to get in, just like the original M6GT. Now, as far as room in the cockpit, as you can see, there's actually a lot of leg room, but it gets a little tight from side to side. So, Retroformance is planning on opening this up a little bit, putting a roll cage in for safety, and making it more comfortable for 2 people to ride in. But the big question that everybody has is the drivetrain. We have an awesome one here, but unfortunately, we're out of time on this project today.
And now, Parts Bin.
If you've been around the automotive world very much, you are probably familiar with Holley's EFI sniper system for the 4-barrel carburetor and for the 2-barrel carburetor. But what you probably haven't seen is this new Sniper EFI fuel injection system for the Autolite 1100 1-barrel carburetor. Now, you might be looking at that going, now, why would Holley do that? Well, because Studebaker, International, Chrysler, and especially Ford put that Autolite carburetor on pretty much everything that did not have a V8 in it. So, Holley designed a body that bolts right down on the stock intake manifold. Then you've got all the throttle linkage exactly where it needs to be, so that hooks right up, it bolts on, and it just plugs right in. Of course, you have all the sensors that you're going to need, you have the tuning module, and all of the other hookups. So now you have fuel injection, it self-tunes, and it's compatible with your stock distributor, or you can upgrade that too. The Sniper doesn't care. So if you've got an old Mustang or a truck or a wood chipper, something that's got a 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder with a single barrel carburetor, now you can put fuel injection on it with the Sniper EFI 1-barrel fuel injection system. You know, everybody loves a big pry bar, especially those big long ones that give you the leverage to bring down a small building if you try hard enough. But as cool as these are, the reality is you're not going to use these very often. What you will use all the time are smaller pry bars like this. But the problem with these kind of pry bars is in the fixed end, because you're at the mercy of whatever end is on these, and you may or may not be able to use them in your situation. So a lot of people reach for a screwdriver or a ratchet handle and use that as a pry bar. Well, you don't need to do that anymore, because Cornwell has come out with this 3-piece indexing pry bar set. Now, the first thing that you'll notice, these are hardened steel from end to end, so they're not going to bend, they're not going to break on you, and they're in 3 different sizes, so you can get into those tight little areas where you need to pry. But the coolest part is this indexing end. You just push this button, you rotate that end to where it needs to be, and then it locks in place and you're ready to go to work. So, quit reaching for a screwdriver or a ratchet handle. Get the proper tool. Your knuckles will thank you.
A successful automotive project takes planning and organization. But instead of using an old tablet or notebook, there's the GEARZ Deluxe Project Planning Book. This was designed to help you lay out a project, the parts, the tools, costs, and keep it organized with colored tabs, a pouch for receipts, and even a place to attach photos. If you decide to sell the vehicle, it serves as a complete history of what's been done. If you have a project or plan on starting one, the GEARZ Project Planning Book is the best way to lay it out and make it happen. Can't get enough gears? Make sure to check out the Tales of a Gearhead podcast, where Stacey brings a lifetime of automotive knowledge, friendships, and expertise to the listener. Also, check out our social media channels for updates and videos of GEARZ projects, as well as special contests, giveaways, and events. If you have a vehicle you want to enter into What Are You Working On?, go to staceydavid.com and submit it. There's also the online store and tons of other Gearhead information that will encourage you to get out there, build something, and go drive it. And now, Parts Bin.
If you've messed with exhaust systems very much, you know there's always 2 main issues: aligning the pipes and keeping leaks away. Well, now it's possible to take care of both of those problems at the same time with these ball flange kits from Flowmaster. Take a look. Now, as you can see, this is basically just a ball and socket that come together and seal because you're tightening against this taper here. Now, once you get them bolted together, you can see you got a nice connection, no gasket needed, no leakage, and you've got some adjustment so you can take care of whatever misalignment you might have. Now, Flowmaster makes these in different sizes. This is a 2.5-inch pipe to 2.5. Here's a 2.5-inch to 3. Here's a 3 to 3. So they pretty much have what you're going to need. Now, you might be wondering, where would I use this? Well, you can replace a gasket flange on a header. You can replace a slip joint on a couple of pipes. Pretty much any place where two pipes come together, these would be great to use. So if you're still using that kind of clamp, or even a band clamp, there's another option. The ball flange kit from Flowmaster.
And now, what are you working on? Brought to you by Woodward Fabrication, selling quality metalworking equipment since 1966. And Mouse Blocker, protecting your vehicle.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Mike. He's from Kansas City, Missouri. And he said that he's been a hot rod enthusiast ever since he was in high school in the 60s. But he had a particular fascination with Bonneville racers. So he said in 2013, he decided he was going to build his own belly tanker. So here's what went into it. First of all, he got himself a 1948 Ford Flathead, put dual carbs on it. The engine's pretty much stock, but he backed it with a 3-speed manual transmission. Then he said the fuselage is a combination of 2 polished F-86 drop tanks. This is awesome, man. I love this. And he said there's a narrow frame of 2-inch square tubing inside for strength. Then, of course, it's a mid-engine design and has center steering. You think that this is just a race car, but actually this is a street car. He said it's got a full array of gauges, 12-volt power, 2 USB ports, 2 map pockets, and wait for it, a cup holder. Man, I love it. This is such a cool project. Now, he said in the front, he used 2 motorcycle fog lights for headlights, and then in the back, he used 5 '59 Cadillac bullets for taillights. Now, this is really cool. He said the shifting is accomplished by 2 gear shifts with 5-foot rods connected to the transmission. So one shifter is for first and reverse, the other is for second and third. And great engineering here. Now, like I said, this is street legal. It's got headers on it with baffles. And he said it took him 9 years to complete this thing, but he said it has been challenging and such a rewarding project. Mike, this is a great example of a level 5 full custom build. Great job on this. So to recognize such a great project, Mike, we are going to give you one of these manual tubing benders from Woodward Fab. Now, like I said, it's a manual bender. You bolt it down to the floor, and then it will allow you to make quality bends in some lighter gauge metal tubing. Then we're going to give you one of these GEARZ fender covers so you can flop it over the fender of whatever you're working on to protect the paint. Then we're going to give you one of these deluxe project planning books. This will allow you to keep track of everything that you've done to that belly tanker. Then we're going to give you a Sergeant Rock diecast and a GEARZ coffee car package so you can enjoy some coffee, and then you can see what collectible sticker might be inside of there. Also, we're going to set your shop up with a mouse blocker system. This will keep the rodents and the animals out of your garage and your cars. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this and get your projects featured on the show, you got to send them to us. Go to our website, go to GEARZ Nation, and submit it into What Are You Working On? The website's also the place to find out more information on any products you may have seen on the show, any GEARZ merchandise, and how to join GEARZ Nation. Also, make sure you check out our social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all at Official Stacey David. YouTube is also the place to view all of your favorite GEARZ episodes, as well as the GEARZ Restoration Series and our full project builds that follow a project from beginning to end. And finally, if you're a radio person, be sure and check out our podcast, Tales of a Gearhead. All right, that wraps it up for us today. Hopefully you feel inspired to get out there and build something. Man, there's a lot of kits available, or there's just a lot of cars and trucks out there waiting for you to pick up a project. So get out there, start working on something. We'll see you next time.